All right, so last Saturday night, Tyson Fury faced off against Francis Ngannou in a fight that going in, many of us, the overwhelming majority, thought would be a non-competitive fight that we thought would primarily be a mismatch. And boy, boy, were we wrong. It was a very competitive fight. The overwhelming majority, from what I've seen, seemed to feel as though Tyson Fury actually lost the fight and was very, very fortunate to get the decision. Francis Ngannou, credit where credit is due, absolutely good performance. There's a lot of talent there, real natural talent. Honestly, like you wonder if he turned pro a decade earlier, what could he have achieved in the world of boxing? Because really impressed with what I seen. But at the same time, Tyson Fury, and this is not to take anything away from Francis Ngannou in the slightest, so don't misconstrue what I'm talking about in this video. Tyson Fury looked dreadful. He really, truly looked dreadful in there. And yes, I think that an element of it was him not taking Francis Ngannou serious, but I think Saturday night really was the culmination of a man who has been very careful, especially since he came back in 2018, on how he's managed his comeback. And it's a man I don't think has ever really been firing on all cylinders since he's come back in 2018. And I think Saturday night we really saw the culmination of everything. Now the question is, can he get into a position where he's good enough? It's going to be hard to get worse than last Saturday, but it's going to be even harder to get back to the heights of the Deontay Wilder rematch performance. And that's the kind of performance he needs against someone like Alexander Usyk, who was still saying December the 23rd. Whether we get it on that day or not remains to be seen. We're not going to talk about Usyk versus Fury. We're going to talk primarily about Fury since his comeback. And we look at how he's managed to come back. And deep down, I'm starting to wonder, well, I knew we would never get the Fury who fought Klitschko. I knew that Fury was gone. Even when he came back, I knew we'd never get back to that level of Tyson Fury, where he's comfy in the 240s, where he's got, good balance, good speed, able to box for 12 rounds, keep disciplined, everything. I knew we'd never get that Fury, probably ever again. Certainly won't get it now. And obviously he was being trained by Peter Fury. A lot of people feel as though even now he is missing more so than ever the influence of Peter Fury. I'm not saying if he'd had Peter Fury in the corner on Saturday night that the result would have been any different. I think that no matter who's in his corner now at this point, Fury is showing signs of serious decline. And when I talk about his comeback, we go back to June 2018, was when he made his comeback against Sefer Safiri. Now, he made that comeback in Manchester, and no one was expecting anything. There was no real high expectations. It was a bit of a clown show, truth be told. Messing around with Safiri at the weigh-in. The fight itself was just laughable. It was like an exhibition. But this was a guy who had been out of the ring for nearly 3 years, well over 2.5 years. November 2015 was his last fight, and then he was fighting in June 2018. So 2.5 years, nearly 3 years. No one begrudged him a bad performance. He didn't look good, but no one expected him to. Aesthetically, he looked in very bad shape. He was in the high 270s, but no one was expecting anything good. He has a fight then in August against Francesco Pianetta, who always was a fringe European level fighter, was European level thereabouts, fought Klitschko, fought Shigaev, was knocked out in the round by Shigaev, which is not a good look at all. And that was in his prime. So again, no one expected much from Fury. He was lighter in this fight, but he still didn't look at the races. Didn't look himself. Then, inexplicably, we get the announcement that he's going to fight Deontay Wilder. Now, a lot of people look at that fight and they say, well, he must have known he had something in the tank going into the Deontay Wilder fight, because and he'd fought very well against Deontay Wilder. But you got to look at it in a wider sense, right? When AJ fought Vladimir Klitschko in 2017, me and many others, and I wasn't doing videos at the time, but I thought, wow, that's insane they're putting him in with Klitschko, because that's way too soon. And I honestly thought Klitschko would win that fight. And he almost did. But I understood it in one sense from Eddie Hearn and Joshua's perspective, in a sense of you're inexperienced as a pro. Yes, you've got a title, but you're very inexperienced as a pro. That fight is going to generate millions upon millions. If you win, happy days, and we saw the star AJ was for those couple of years. If you lose, it's not like losing in a way to Andy Ruiz, where the casual audience just don't know who he is, and he looks just like, you know, a chubby little guy with a sombrero on. That's basically what people were saying. Losing to Klitschko, you can always turn around and say he fought a legend, he lost, he wasn't ready, we need to build him back up. And in that sense, the fans would probably stick with him, because they'd be like, okay, yeah, he was, you know, it was only his 18th, 19th fight. I don't even think he was 20-0 when he fought Klitschko. So I could kind of get that. And in Fury's situation, it could be a case of, well, you're not even back 6 months and you're already fighting for a world title. You weren't ready. There's still more work to be done. You'd be ready in a year, 18 months. So you win, happy days, you've won, great achievement. You lose, depending on how you lose, you can always use that excuse of, well, he wasn't particularly ready. You can build him back up. And obviously he didn't win, he didn't lose. It was a draw. But it was like a win. He gained so much off the back of that. But then we go into 2019, and this is really when you start to see the very, very careful working from Tyson Fury. So in 2019, early in that year, there was talk of him versus Dillian Whyte. Now, that fight never materialized. It did happen in 2022, and some people would say, well, you know, we knew the result because it happened in 2022. Yeah, 3 years after the fact, right? In 2019, Dillian Whyte's last fight was against Derek Chisora, a fight in which was competitive, was close. But he looked particularly good against Derek Chisora. He did. Shot selection seemed pretty good, was able to knock Derek Chisora out devastatingly, which is something that Tyson Fury, in 3 fights, I don't even think he ever dropped Chisora. Dillian Whyte had Chisora damn near out cold, right? Now, Tyson Fury made a stipulation when there was talk of that fight. And he said that he'd fight Dillian Whyte if the WBC Diamond Belt was on the line. And the WBC said, okay. Now, the Diamond Belt is just a kind of tricky title. It doesn't really have any merit. They tend to give it to high-ranked contenders the odd time. They don't really give it out as much these days. But that was one of the things he said he wanted. WBC said, okay, there you go. Did Fury face Dillian Whyte? No, he didn't. Even after that, he still didn't face Dillian Whyte. He went ahead and he fought Tom Schwartz. And this right here sachets into something that's been happening today or in the recent past, where Frank Warren, when people have spoke to him and said, why is Tyson Fury not facing his contemporaries in the heavyweight division? The Frank Sanchez's, the Arsenal Makhmedovs, the Martin Bacolis of the world. You know, when he could be facing them and they're calling for that fight, why isn't he facing them? I remember Adam Cattrall, very good interview it was Adam Cattrall did with Frank Warren, brought that up, and as Warren would say, well, you know, why does he need to? Who are they? They don't bring any money. Well, Frank, you sold Tyson Fury versus Tom Schwartz, a complete pudding. That's Tom Schwartz's box right there, a complete pudding, a complete no-hoper. He sold that on pay-per-view, and not only did he sell it on pay-per-view, he sold it as a world title fight, right? And one of the selling points was that Tom Schwartz was highly ranked by the WBO. I think he was in the top 5 of the WBO rankings. But yet he can't fight highly ranked contenders in the WBC rankings because, well, no one knows who they are. That was what was happening in 2019. He had back-to-back fights, both on pay-per-view, both sold as world title fights against fighters that no one knew. Now, Tom Schwartz, anyone could see he was a pudding. Otto Wallin, to look at some of his footage, and I remember looking at it at the time, he didn't look amazing. He didn't look particularly good. And Otto Wallin is he's not a top 10 heavyweight, no stretch of the imagination. He's not. He is someone who, you put him in with AJ, you put him in with Wilder, Usyk, Bacoli, etc. He loses, and he probably loses bad. But he'll be competitive, I'll put it like that. But he'll probably get starched out by all those guys. That was who he fought then. And that turned out to be a much, much tougher fight. Don't let the people saying Otto Wallin won the fight. You know, Fury won it. And he won it clearly, but it was difficult, very difficult, and his punch output went very down. After that, it was a case of, okay, we need to change things. Because Fury in his comeback was still fighting the old style that he was doing with Peter Fury, where he was moving, he was popping a jab, he was up on his toes, but he didn't have the legs, he didn't have the foot speed, he didn't have the reflex, he didn't have anything that he did before the layoff. And Ben Davison couldn't add anything to his game. Ben Davison was a very inexperienced coach at the time, remember that, right? Very inexperienced. He's gained a lot more boxing knowledge and he's gained a lot more experience over the years, but at that time he was still very inexperienced. So they decided they needed to change up his style, and they didn't just need a new coach, they needed a new style overhaul. So they went to Kronk. Andy Lee being a cousin to Tyson Fury, in contact with Sugar Hill Stewart. They met, and this gave Fury years onto his career because he took to the Kronk style like a duck takes to water. Okay, he was able to employ that style against Wilder in the rematch, look very good. And we remember Wilder is a limited heavyweight. He is someone who relies, especially then, or even now, he relies so much on that right hand, it's insane. You know, that's all it is. You take that right hand away, you know, what have you got really? You don't have much. And that's what Fury did. He was able to measure Deontay Wilder, take the right hand away, and give him a beat. And again, he looked superb in that fight. That new style really added new lease of life into Tyson Fury. But then again, we have a stretch of inactivity. No mention of fights or anything like that. He didn't fight from February 2020 until October 2021. And in which time he had to fight Deontay Wilder again, a man he'd already beaten. And by this time, he didn't look in as good a shape physically for the rematch, aesthetically. He was slower. It was noticeable. He was slower. And he was walking onto more shots. Ultimately, he was dropped twice against Deontay Wilder. Now, Wilder made catastrophic mistakes in that fight. Several mistakes. One of the mistakes he made was coming away too heavy and artificially blowing himself up with muscles, which was just... He might have actually won that fight if he'd have been in the 220s. I'm not saying he would have, but he might have. Because he might have had more energy, more stamina, and he would have been able to move out of the way of some of these shots a lot better. But Fury moves on. He then fights Dillian Whyte, someone who by this point in 2019, he'd only been stopped once by Anthony Joshua, and he'd had some good performances. By this point, he'd been brutally knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. He'd apparently had some injuries which prevented him fighting in 2022 other than the Povetkin rematch. And again, Povetkin was shot to pieces by the time even in the first fight, he was shot to pieces until he landed that uppercut. So he was fighting a Dillian Whyte who was half the man he was 3 years ago. And of course, Tyson Fury looked very good in that fight. Dillian Whyte had no real answer to anything Fury was given, and Fury gets the win. And then he has another fight against Derek Chisora, a man who had seen much better days 8 years before. And he fights him. So you see what he's doing. He's not fighting the best who are available. He's fighting guys who he knows I'm going to look good against. And they're not going to expose my weaknesses. Because at this time, we're hearing stories from people like Alan Babbage saying, you know, Fury in the gym, you know, there's injuries there and there's fighters I'd be picking over him. I remember he said he picked Joe Joyce to beat Tyson Fury because Tyson Fury is so injury ridden, right? That he is slowing down, that he's not the fighter he once was. And against guys like Chisora, against guys like Dillian Whyte, who are slow, shot to pieces, their chin is not the best in Dillian Whyte's case, he was able to go in there and look good and have those weaknesses not be as in your face. You could see he'd slow down against Dillian Whyte. You could see he'd slow down against Chisora, but it wasn't as apparent as it was against someone like Francis Ngannou, who was a lot fresher, a lot stronger, a different style. But crucially, in a different style, yeah, but he was able to actually go and box with Fury. He had just as long arms. He was physically able to impose himself. And Fury had to force everything. Fury wasn't able to bully Ngannou. He wasn't able to hurt Ngannou. He forced so many of his punches. He looked slow, lethargic in there. I would say some of it does stem from having maybe not a fully committed training camp. But I think that now we're seeing how far gone Fury is. And to be honest with you, other than that night against Deontay Wilder, I don't think Fury has ever really... Well, he's never been the Fury of 2015. That Fury is long gone. But I don't think he's ever really been close to that. And that's probably why he's managed his career so carefully. You know, had he stayed with Peter Fury, had he never gone off the rails in 2015, would he have made the Wilder fight earlier? Would he have followed through with some of the things he said about, you know, going and cleaning out the event, fighting anybody and stuff like that? Maybe. But when he came back in 2018, he must have known that I am not the fighter I once was. If I'm going to take a risk, it has to be for absolutely the right reasons. With Wilder, it was right, but where's the other risks come from? I'll be getting to this year, and with the Alexander Usyk fight that was being talked about early this year, Fury constantly moving the goalpost, constantly taking a fight for big money against Ngannou he thinks will be an easy touch. And in the build-up to that fight, as his manager, or I think it was his manager, even said, the Usyk fight wasn't signed until after the Ngannou fight was signed. And by then, an offer that was obviously too good for him to refuse came, and he was like, all right, let's take the risk. Let's take the risk. He's back into a corner now. He's got to take that fight. But now we're seeing how far Fury has fallen, in my opinion. And I think that maybe 2020 was kind of Fury when his body had acclimatized to being back in camp. He'd, got the ring rust off over the last couple of years. And maybe that was the one good year he had in him. And after that, it was gone. After that, it was what we see in 2021. And obviously now, where we're seeing a much slower, the Kronk style that gave him a new lease of life, it's starting to have a shelf life on him as well. And I think we're seeing a fighter coming near the end of his career. And I think it all stems from the fact that Fury has not lived a clean lifestyle. And I have to emphasize this. People always harp on about the 2.5 years he was out of the ring, alcohol and everything. And yeah, that's true. And I'd say you could see his voice even changed. He was so overweight. But Fury throughout his career has done that. Now, not to that extent. Of course, not to that extent. But early in his career, he was out of shape, drinking, everything. And even now when he finishes camp, he's not doing it to the extent he used to, but he's still not keeping himself in very good shape. You can only get away with it for so long. And now I think it's a combination of everything. The body is starting to show signs of aging. The lifestyle he's lived is catching up on him. The style is just not, his body just isn't able to pull it off anymore. And I think right now we have a very, very, very beatable fighter. And I think for Fury, it probably is a case that Alexander Usyk is the biggest money fight that he's going to get. And it's the only fight that he could maybe, hopefully, for him, try and impose his will on and hope that his size gets him through it. Because against someone like Anthony Joshua, he's not really going to be able to bully, because Joshua is pretty strong as well, I would say Joshua takes that fight. And with Usyk, maybe he's thinking, okay, look, I was able to bully Steve Cunningham. It was a tough fight, but I used my size. Maybe that's what I can do with him. I don't think he will. I think Usyk, based upon what I saw on Saturday, is going to absolutely have a field day with Tyson Fury if they fight, which I hope they will. That's my thoughts. I wanted to just, and look again, not to take anything away from Ngannou. Great performance. But I think that we are really starting to see how far Tyson Fury has fallen. And as I said, he's never probably been as good as he was, and never going to be the same Fury he was in 2015. But how far has that fallen? I think he's fallen a lot. An awful lot. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll leave it there. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I'm going to leave you with that. Look in the comment section. Pinned in the comment section. Boxing Showtimes, the app. Great little app, pinned in the comment section. Use the promo code GMAN. You get a reduction, you get a discount on the membership there. Plus you get a 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time. It is well worth using, well worth downloading. I cannot emphasize it enough. Go and download the app. Click on that link. It takes 2 seconds. You could have clicked on it. Anyway, I'll leave it there, people. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe if you haven't already.
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Enjoy watching fights in a bar, sipping a cold one? We got you. An interactive map with your local boxing bars is available to you at any time. And that's not everything. Set reminders, buy tickets, watch official highlights, get boxing news, and so much more. Download now. Thank us later.